All right. Double check if it's recording. Yep, perfect. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Desiree McNeil. I am the Student Success Graduate Student Assistant here at Lorry College, San Jose State University. And welcome to our last alumni panel for the month of April. And this is our Doctoral Pathway Alumni Panel, which is very exciting to learn more about getting a doctorate degree for some of our alumni here. And so I'm going to introduce them. Melanie, I'm going to start you off, introduce yourself, and then we'll pass on to Kevin.
Sure. Hi, I'm Melanie Chong. I graduated from San Jose State in 2019. I got my master's degrees in special education and in curriculum and instruction. And after graduating, I worked at a large research institute, SRI Education, for a year before starting my doctoral program. So now I'm at Vanderbilt University. I just finished my second year and I study special education. My research interests are in the use of technology interventions to help students with reading difficulties, reading disabilities across content areas. And Kevin.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kevin Juan. I've done 2 stints at San Jose State. So the first one was to get my teaching credential when I became a classroom teacher. And that was back in, I want to say 2007 or so. And then in 2017, I returned to campus to pursue my doctoral degree in educational leadership, and completed my degree actually just, 4 months ago. So December is when I graduated.
Congratulations. So exciting.
Yes.
Yes, and congratulations. I add on to it, Melanie. So the congratulations. Wow, that's amazing. So thank you both for introducing yourself a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and read y'all's bios to go into a little more in depth on your journey and who you are. I'm going to go ahead and start off with Melanie, and then I'm going to read Kevin's. So Melanie Chong holds a MA degree in education from San Jose State University with the emphasis in special education and curriculum and instruction, and a bachelor's in psychology from UC Berkeley. She worked in middle school, general, and special education classrooms for 4 years before transitioning to a career in educational research. As a research associate at SRI International Education Division, she supported large-scale research projects and technical assistance centers. Currently, she's a second-year doctoral student in special education at Vanderbilt University College. Her research interests stem from her classroom experience. It includes assistive instructional technologies, inclusive classrooms, and teaching practices in learning disabilities. So that is Melanie. So thank you, Melanie. And then we have Kevin. And Kevin, so since recently graduating in December, congrats again, with his doctoral degree in educational leadership, Dr. Juan, all right, he's a doctor now, has continued his role as a site leader, serving as a principal at a high school in San Jose. This is his 14th year in public K-12 public education and 3rd year as a principal. During his short tenure at a high school, our principal, he has worked with staff, students in the community to shift the teaching and learning experience entirely online during the pandemic school year. And he has adjusted incredibly to full-person instruction this school year. As the global pandemic continues to affect our daily lives, the public education space continues to navigate the changing circumstances, and educators work tirelessly to offer the best educational experience for our students. So thank you, Kevin. He has done amazing work, and he just got his doctorate degree, so he's doctor now. But I mean, I don't know if you want us to call you doctor or just Kevin. So thank you so much.
Kevin's just fine.
All right, so that's a little bit about them. And so I'm going to go ahead and ask you both some questions, just so as you remember, this is an alumni panel, and we have a few students maybe in this program who might be interested in taking that same path that you all are taking or currently taken. And so I'm going to ask you all a few questions and maybe, you know, inspire some of our or recent grad students to kind of think about this pathway. So I'm trying to think what would be a perfect right question. So the first question is, what made you want to take a doctoral pathway? What made you kind of want to pursue this, you know, a doctorate degree? What made you kind of want to go for your PhD? So what kind of motivated you to go this pathway? Either of you all can start.
Oh, sorry. Man, you know, I think about this question a lot, especially midway through my program. I'm like, why am I here? But I think where it really stemmed from, and something that has been a unifying experience too for a lot of people who have come into my program, is we're all here because we started in classrooms. And what it really was, you know, I was working as a special and then a general education teacher, and I had all these questions, and I felt like I couldn't serve my kids the way they deserved to be. I couldn't get them the resources they needed. You know, it's not like a novel experience as a teacher to be strapped for time and money, and you know, you have a huge caseload and this and that. And I was, to be frank, I was kind of fed up. I was like, this is ridiculous. You know, how come I can't support my kiddos? They need all of these things, especially in special education, to help them succeed in their gen ed classes, because I was teaching kids who were in inclusive settings. So anyway, with that, and with the advice of advisors from San Jose State, they were like, hey, you know, you can pursue these questions like for a living, right? Like people will pay you to do that. And I was like, you're joking. There's no way. And so it was not something I had ever thought of for myself. I like truly didn't realize that it was something I could do, that someone would pay me to do this. But that's what I get to do now for my job. And it's dope. I get to question our education system and then come back with numbers to say, hey, this truly isn't working, or hey, these things are working. How can we get them into classrooms? Yeah, and so that's what led me here, and that's kind of what keeps me going every day. Even as I think as you get removed from the classroom being with kiddos, and Kevin, I think you'll probably have a slightly different experience in this way because you get to see kiddos, you know, in your work. It's something I constantly remind myself, because you do start to feel a little removed if you don't stay in the classroom. But it's always been about making school accessible for everyone.
Love that. Thank you, Melanie, for sharing.
So for me, I think if you were to ask me 10 or 20 years ago, if I would be pursuing my doctorate degree or have a doctorate degree, I'd probably say like, you're out of your mind. You know, there's no way. I never would have thought of getting a degree beyond the bachelor's degree. I think what prompted me, I was at a point in my professional career, if we were to kind of go back, it's probably 10 years into my educational career, where I felt that two things resonated, like two things really pulled me in this direction. The first was my grandmother, who when I was younger had said, you know, no matter what path you choose, be on top, be the best person. And that could, you know, come in different ways, right? Whether it's through years of experience or in education. So I think for me then at that point, it was, okay, I've been in the education space for 10 years. I've gotten, you know, a graduate degree, but I don't have the highest degree. So that kind of drew me in. And then secondly, I think 10 years being in the educational pathway, I thought I had the practical knowledge and experience. And at that time, I was then seeking the academic scholarship side knowledge. And that's what the doctoral program that I've had the opportunity to be a part of really offered me, which was the kind of the scholar practitioner combination. Yeah, I'd been a practitioner for a long time, but in terms of the academia, that wasn't an area that I was familiar with. That wasn't an area that I was really experienced in. And my short time frame, it sounds short, but the doctor program is not short. But the totality, I think for me, the program experience had allowed me to really understand the academic field, the scholarship field, and that's allowed me to become a better educator. And as I continue to be an instructional leader, it's helped me immensely. There were times in the program where I just felt like these classes, if I'd taken them during my teaching credential program, I would have been a much more effective classroom teacher. So it's that thirst for knowledge for me that led me on this path. And my grandmother just saying, you gotta be on top, and there's no other way than getting the culminating degree and then having the experience where you can say, you're pretty high up there, so to speak.
Yeah, I would say you're pretty high up there.
You're never really high up there, not in this profession.
Yeah, no, I was like, I don't know, there's another degree that's but definitely, that's great. Thank you so much, Kevin, for sharing. And I guess my next question is, with you both sharing kind of like why y'all have got into or took in this pathway, what advice would you give for, I would say, do you think has it been worth it for I guess this experience? Has it been worth it? And what kind of advice would you give for current graduate students who are thinking about a doctoral pathway? Would you recommend it? Would you recommend it? Do you think it is a right path, depending on what they're trying to do? But do you recommend kind of taking this pathway, and what are maybe some of the pros and cons? Let's go with that. What are some of the pros and cons to kind of taking this pathway, and what do you really advise folks to kind of take this pathway? It's kind of a loaded question, but Melanie, you can go first if you like. Kevin already spoke. Kind of rotate.
Oh man. Okay, well, I'll just start with the cons.
Okay.
You take a severe pay cut for at least 4 years of your life. So there's that. So as a doc student, you're not making the money that you are making as a working professional, that's just the reality. That's going to be how it is no matter where you go. But with that said, there are programs that will fund you to go and get a PhD. And this is something I didn't know. So I want to preface this by saying, kind of like Kevin said, if you'd told me that I was going to go to school for my doctorate like 5 years ago, I'd have been like, what does that even mean? What does that look like? Can I do that? And so then to learn, one, that I could get paid to do research, and then two, that a school would pay me to come and do it, mind-boggling, like absolutely what? It's not super lucrative, but there are funding opportunities. So if for someone who's considering going back to school at the doctoral level, seek out funding opportunities, seek out institutions that will fund you to go, because they're out there, they exist, that money is there, go and grab it, it's yours. So that's a pro. That's definitely a pro. I think one thing that people communicated to me about just PhD programs in general, and this is, I think, also the socially accepted kind of feeling about them, is that it has to be your whole life, your whole existence is in pursuit of this degree. And I don't think that has to be true. So that was one thing that really scared me about this, was like, oh man, I'm putting everything on hold absolutely everything. I can't continue my life in any way because I have to be all about assistive technology for students with learning disabilities for the next 4 to 5 years of my life, and then everything after that. And it's just not true. That said, I'm very passionate about, the research that I'm interested in, and I get myself immersed in it. But I think you can do that without feeling like you have to lose your identity in the process. So in some ways, and for some people, like even people here that I go to school with, I think that's a con, right? That your whole world has to be this world of academia. But for me, it's been a pro. I think I can kind of lose myself in it when I want to, but it doesn't have to be my everything. So I would just say with that, people will tell you what the experience has to be. I mean, I'm sitting here saying what I think the experience is and should be, but it can be what you need it to be at the same time.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's similar to what Melanie said. Desiree asked, is it worth it? And my initial response was, well, it depends on the month. Some months it was like, why am I doing this? And then other months it's like, wow, I'm learning so much because of the research and because of having conversations with your advisor or, your peers. And so that can be very rewarding. I think for me, it was really about personal growth. So I think, if you look at it from a macro level, is it worth it? I think, at least for me, I can say it was definitely worth it. Now that I've completed the program, I can see that light at the end of the tunnel and then look back and say, yeah, it was pretty dark for a period of time. But I think I'm a much better person. I'm a much better educator. I'm a much better leader. And those were some of the things I wanted to be, prior to joining the program. So definitely worth it. I would say this, I'm a movie buff. I love John Wick. So if you don't get this reference, I don't have another example, but John Wick.
John Wick.
Yeah. So John Wick, if you know the character, a person described John Wick, and John Wick, they say in the movie, they say John Wick is a man of focus, commitment, and sheer will. And I think that that's very accurate, at least for me, going through a doctoral program. You have to have those three qualities. With research, it's really about having that curiosity, but you have to focus on a particular topic and stay true to that topic. It will evolve throughout the research period, but in general, you have to really try and stay on point on it. And in commitment and sheer will, life throws curveballs. As Melanie mentioned, you take a pay cut, or there's a change in lifestyle. There's going to be sacrifices that are made, and so it really boils down to a test of commitment, a test of will, and that's where I think I've seen the greatest value, is knowing that, oh wow, I didn't know there was this other level that I could really push myself or learn, take in this amount of information and have a very productive dialogue amongst professors, colleagues, because at that point you become colleagues, and never saw myself getting to that point until going through the program, where I realized, oh, you know what, I can do this. So yeah, I think for anybody who's really enjoys having conversations around certain topics, they want to know more about it, making connections with things that they're reading, the doctoral journey is a great space to venture into.
Perfect. I love that reference for John Wick, because I love John Wick. I feel like I have watched so many. I watched the movies over and over again. Something about John. He's good. He inspires me too. Not the killing part, but just his wit, his motivation. He is relentless for sure. So I actually have a question from one of our student here. She or I want Jennifer. They asked, how long after getting your bachelor's degree did you decide to go to grad school? Is there pressure to go right after your first 4 years? And I'm just going to put that question in the chat so y'all can reference it, which is a great question. Quick question.
This is a great question because I was like, well, I haven't been planning for, to get a doctorate. So my timeline must be off. There. So to answer your question, there's no timeline. Like the right timeline is your timeline. So after I got my bachelor's, I went and worked in schools for a year as a para. So I supported students with disabilities, but I wasn't their primary teacher. And when I was there, I was like, oh, I want to be like that. I want to be like that classroom teacher. And so that's what brought me to San Jose State to get my master's. And that took me 3 years because I got master's and credentials in both general and special education. And I taught that whole time too, which is anyone who's going through a credentialing program there kind of knows that life. And when I finished the program, that's when I was like, oh, I got to do all this cool like research for my master's. Like, what if I did that for a living? And so that took me to SRI immediately after finishing my master's. And I was there for a year before starting the PhD program. With that said, you don't have to jump like immediately from one thing to the next. You're signing on for a good number of years being committed to, like for me, it was even for my master's, I was signing on for a good number of years being committed to that. Now I'm signed on for 4 more. And I think before looking at anyone else's timeline and seeing like, oh, well, they did it this way, they did it that way, take a step back and decide, is this what's right for me, right? When do I feel like if, I have to move for school, when do I feel like I'm ready to uproot and take that step? The schools will be there. They'll be there the next year. They'll be there the year after that. Spots in the program will be there, but do it when you're ready, I think is the best advice I could give. Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with Melanie. The timeline is based upon when you feel ready. Personally, for me, I went to grad school, I think 5 years after I'd completed my bachelor's. And then 5 years after that to pursue my doctorate. So it really is based upon when you feel ready. There's no pressure. And in my doctoral cohort, we had among the dozen of us, the age range was those that basically went from completing their bachelor's right into their master's and now right into the doctoral program, to everything in between, and all the way to those that have already been in the profession for a very long time, like we're talking about several decades. They're in their 40s, they're in their 50s, and they're in the program. And I actually appreciated the range. So, everybody brings in a different perspective. They bring in different experiences that can contribute to thoughtful discussions. And so it really comes down to when you feel ready to take that next step of pursuing, the degree that you want to go after.
I just want to add to that. My cohort looks the same, in not like all the same person, but the same as in, we have a wide age range for our cohort. And I think what doctoral programs are looking for at this level is, your experience and your commitment to what you want to study, right? And that is separate from age, separate from how far removed you are from any academic institution. It's really about what you have done up to that point, where you've worked, what your experiences have been, and what brought you to want to study this thing, all the way into the ground, study every single thing about it. So yeah, on your time, when you're ready.
Perfect. Yeah. Love that. And then I guess I do think a question that others might have also. I think when we think of like PhD programs or doctoral pathways, like like how, like what is the biggest challenge, I guess? Maybe that's I guess one of my questions. Like while you were in the program, Kevin, and maybe Melanie, while you're in the program currently, what were your biggest challenges in being in this taking this doctoral pathway? Like what has been the biggest challenge for y'all as y'all have gone through this process?
I'm like, how do I just pick one?
Or you can give it to us, real, and
I will. I will.
Please
don't
do.
worry, I plan to. And I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just that it's challenging and that it's a huge lifestyle change. So for me, much of my working life has been in classrooms where everything from your, bathroom breaks to how long you can breathe within a minute is like scheduled for you. And then you leave the classroom and you're like, you mean I can eat my lunch whenever I want? And it's shocking because you're not living by a bell. So I felt really lucky that I had a year of experience outside of the classroom working in education research before coming to do my PhD, that I kind of learned how to work on that less structured schedule, because I know a lot of my peers really struggled with that when all of a sudden they're thrown back into school after having taught for so many years. And they suddenly have to schedule their own time. It sounds simple, but it's a very big shift in terms of what you're used to and how you know how to work. So even for me, with some experience doing that, that's still been really tough. A lot of the program is self-guided in that the end product you have to create, and however you get from A to B, that's a you problem at that point. So that's been tough, but a good kind of tough on the whole. The other thing I think is it can be really isolating. For me, it's isolating because I moved across the country. So I live in Nashville now. I was born and raised in the Bay my whole life. And all of a sudden I was like, yeah, why not? Let's go to the American South. So it's isolating in that it can be physically isolating if you're moving for a school. It's isolating in that, maybe not a lot of your friends or your family or people in your circle are kind of going through this education system in your adult life with you. And then it's isolating in that you choose like a niche area to study and not a lot of people study it. So, you eventually get to a point where like, no one really wants to talk to you about that very niche thing anymore, you don't want to be that person at dinner that's like, oh, but you know what, I read this article today. Like you just, you kind of compartmentalize that in your head. But with that said, I'm saying these things as challenges, but they're also things that I've been able to tackle. I'm not like a highly social or extroverted person, and I still feel like I've been able to tackle, a lot of newness all at once. So I will give you those challenges while also saying it's not the end of the world. Like it's okay. And then one last thought, sorry, and then Kevin, it's all yours. The reality of this is that financial stability can be really hard. I am very privileged coming into this with some working background. I was like squirreling my money away. I had no dependents or anything. And so when I came here, I had some money saved up that I've been able to live off of. I have family support, and I'm at an institution that pays their doc students, some of the highest stipends for special education. I'm very, very privileged in that. And that is not the reality for a lot of people who decide to pursue a degree at this level. And so that is a very, very real challenge that I think some people find a way to address, but that I think everyone should be aware of going into it, because you don't want to be halfway through and being like, oh no, I didn't plan this far. So yeah.
Thank you for giving us the real, but it wasn't bad at all. Thank you.
So I've got 3 challenges. I think the first one, in no particular priority, but the first one, after hearing what Melanie mentioned about isolating, I totally resonated with that. That is one of the challenges. When someone pursues a doctoral degree, the research topic is so niche. It's so specific. It's something generally that no one has ever done. I mean, that's the intent. And then here you are trying to basically become the expert. And in that process, you're unless you're, you're constantly in a group that shares that same interest, which that can't be possible. They do get tired about hearing the same stuff over and over. And at times you could be tired of saying the same stuff over and over. And every once in a while, somebody might be interested in hearing about it. And you're just like, well, I've already said it for the fifth or sixth time. But it is isolating in that manner. It's just hard to also find somebody to share about your research outside of your committee. If you have family members, if you have friends that aren't in the field, it's just very difficult to share that. So it can be very isolating in that regard. And that gets amplified with my next challenge, and that's finding the balance. So I know with Melanie, she's in a full-time program or a full-time student. When I went through the doctor program at San Jose State, it was considered a full-time program for full-time professionals. So for me, it was during the day, I was leading a school, in the evenings and or on weekends, taking classes or working on my research. So having to balance between the personal life, the work life, and then the school life, that can be extremely challenging, which leads me to the third challenge, and that is compartmentalizing. And because of the different aspects of life, it's hard to say, well, I'm just going to dedicate this time right now on my research and ignore what's happening at work, ignore what's happening, in my personal life, the family. And even with just research, compartmentalizing that as well. Like right now, I'm just going to focus on reading these articles and trying to, synthesize these articles. Now I'm going to go ahead and spend this amount of time writing the dissertation. And so that can be a huge challenge. Or now I'm going to take the feedback that my advisor has given me and kind of, rewrite certain things. Those are some of the challenges that I can recall going through the program. That is not to say, again, right, when you complete the program, and Melanie, you're going to complete the program, it is very rewarding. You then, you see those challenges, and then you see how far you've come from overcoming those challenges.
Thank you. I think it is good. I asked that question because I think it is good for people to kind of hear what were some of the challenges, and just so they can kind of also have an idea, kind of prepare themselves if this is something that they want to do. And I guess a follow-up, a positive side, a positive question is, with those challenges and just kind of being making a lot of sacrifices and you having to move to a different state. I hear that a lot often, having to move to a different state to attend their doctoral program. How have you grown professionally and personally while being in pursuing your doctorate degree? How have you grown? How have you changed for the better throughout? If it's for the better, have you grown personally or professionally, or you feel like you not really? You just like you tired. You haven't really grown that much. But I always feel like I think this experience, furthering your education is challenging, and I'm thinking you have to. It makes you somewhat stronger than you going into this.
So I feel like the biggest change for me was I went home recently and I said, y'all, and I was so thrown. I was like, oh my gosh, the 2 years are showing. But in terms of academically, I think, one, I've developed a love of statistics. Who would have thunk? But it's just so fun. And I think what the biggest thing, though, is in learning how to be a researcher and how to conduct high quality, rigorous research, you also learn how to consume research. And there's just so much out there. And as a teacher and in my master's program, to no one's fault, like this isn't a fault of like the program or anything like that. But I just didn't know how to consume research. And because there's only so much you can learn in a day, right? You're like, do I want to teach my kids how to read? Or do I want to learn how to be like a consumer of research? Like, obviously I want to learn how to teach my kids how to read. And so I think that has just been, it's such an important skill because what it's going to translate to ultimately is being able to better support educators, right? To help them, implement high quality practices or think about the things that they do and, why things work or don't work. And not in like a top down kind of way, but in a like a two-way street. Like how do we foster those relationships? How do we have those conversations? And how do we give teachers some agency in that? How do we help them, kind of be in control of their own fates by being able to consume this very important work, or at least work that the federal government deems very important. So that's been a huge change for me. I also think it's given me a little bit of empowerment. When I left teaching, I felt very disillusioned. Not that I don't feel disillusioned these days, but I felt like I couldn't help my kids, and at the end of the day, I was teaching because I really liked, helping my kids progress through school, and, helping them become little adults in the world. And when I walked away from that, I was like, I don't know, like, how did I actually help? How can I actually do this? And so it's kind of given me that renewed hope that like, not all is lost. I hope that one day the work that I do can get into classrooms, if it even helps one kid, I can feel good about that. In the same way that, every day we teach for those wins. So yeah, that's it so far. We'll see where else. I still got some time.
So for me, I think I've grown the most in my student debt. Partially joking there. No, I think the greatest growth really has been around access, and access to knowledge, access to people that have a lot of knowledge in a particular space. For instance, I wasn't aware. I'm now a member of AERA, American Educational Research Association. I would not have known that had I not gone through the program. It's you're able to be with like-minded peers, professors, where this is their livelihood. They do research, and again, for people, getting back to an earlier question, what led me down this path, or is it worth it? I think for someone who has interest or passion for research, it's definitely worth it. They'll see the most gains, for sure. For me, having gone through it, I got the exposure. As Melanie mentioned, the quality, rigorous process for research, that was an important area for me to learn, to go through, because I had not done that in my master's program. So the doctor program really allowed me to, the IRB process, making sure that everything is intentional and that you can actually explain why you are conducting the research the way you are doing, or selecting these participants. So that was something that I really appreciated. And so again, and having the conversations with the people that have that experience. So for me, I think the greatest growth has been around access to this community, where that is their interest, and how that is able to be connected to the K-12 space where I'm in, and further improve the quality of education for our future generations. And like Melanie said, if we can impact one student, definitely worth it.
Yes, I love that. And thank you both for answering that question. And this is my second to last question, but I do have a question for um, students or folks who are thinking about taking this pathway. How should they assess, or what kind of questions should they ask themselves before they apply, or how can they assess if this is the right path for them? Should they reach out to a mentor? Should they, I don't know, write out like a list, pros and cons for themselves? Like, it is expensive, it is a sacrifice, it is a lot of years, depending on what school or what program you apply for. So how do one kind of, I don't know, self-evaluate if this is the right path for them to pursue?
Well, for starters, ask yourself if you like reading because you're going to do a lot of it. Yeah, a lot. So there's that. Um, I have to be completely honest. I did all the things you just mentioned. I talked to all of my mentors. I made pros and cons lists. I made a lot of lists. I let it just marinate in my brain, which is probably less helpful than I wanted it to be. And I sent off all my applications. And by the end of it, I was like, is this the right choice? Like, I don't know. Um, which is terrifying to think about. I still do it. I'm 2 years in and I'm like, is this the right choice? Um, and so I think if you have, well, one, if you like the idea of conducting research, you don't have to fully know what that entails. I didn't. I was like, oh, well, this is what I know about it, and I think I like it. But if you have questions to ask and you want to find the answers and you're committed to finding the answers, that to me is a good enough reason to pursue it, or to at least ask more questions about pursuing it. I really thought that going into this program, I needed to have my question ready for my dissertation off the bat, which is like the big culminating project you do at the very end of your program. I thought I needed to know exactly who I wanted to work for and already be almost an expert in this field. And it's a very intimidating starting line to cross, especially for someone who's not very familiar with, what a doctoral level education looks like, which I wasn't. And so I just felt like, well, this can't be for me because I don't know enough about it. And I'm not the type of person to like cold call people or send random people emails and be like, hey, you do work in this. Can I ask you some questions? Like, that's not it, not my personality. So I was like, I know what I know and I'm going to just go try. And it worked out for me because I had questions I really wanted to find answers to. And I was committed to doing that. With that said, if you are not the type of person like me, if you're not the type of person to like cold call people, cold call me. Okay. Like whoever's watching this, I know it's recorded, but consider us friends now. We're friends now. Okay. Like look me up on LinkedIn. I'll answer all your questions. If you don't even know what questions to ask about a doctoral program, I'll help you find the questions, because I think that there's like this gate, right, that keeps people from higher education, because it's just not something we're all familiar with. And most people in doctoral programs, either students or even professors, want to help you answer those questions, whether you pursue the degree or not. For the most part, we want to help, and we can help you find the questions that you're not sure about asking, but you got to just ask. But you can ask me. We're friends now, so it's totally fine.
Yes, and I was gonna say, go ahead and put your both of y'all Lincoln's profile in the chat, and then I'll save it. Thank you, Melanie. Love that.
Desiree, can you repeat the question? I got so into what Melanie said that
Yeah.
what
Okay,
It's
I
a
also
Thursday
lost the question, and I was just going on vibes at that point. So
yeah, it's Thursday at almost 5 p.m. Yeah. So my question is, if a student's interested, let's say a graduate student or maybe an undergraduate student is interested in going this pathway, how should one assess or kind of determine if this is the right path for them to take? Should they reach out to a mentor? Should they make a lot of lists? Should they talk to a bunch of people? Should they, I don't know, just have like a whole summer to think about it, or a year? Like, how do you go through, making this decision to apply? And then, then you got to wait to hear back. So it's such a process. How do you know if this is the right path for you?
Yeah,
Or how
yeah,
can you assess?
yeah. Now I remember the question. Thank you for.
Oh yeah, no problem.
Um, for me, I mean, for me, it boils down to like, why do this program or why pursue this degree? And then from there, it's like, don't let any other reason that would deter you from pursuing that program convince you not to do the program. So, I mean, there's a reason why there's a small number of people, whether it's in the US or in the world, that have a doctoral degree. Time definitely is a limiting factor, right? People may not want to invest in that time. Certainly tuition. We talked about the finances, lifestyle change. Like the list can go on if people are creating lists. I'm pretty sure that list is going to be the first one to be filled and probably a little bit longer than the other side. I think it really is just why would you want to pursue this particular degree? What's the top reason? What's the motivating factor behind it? I was opposite of Melanie. I didn't actually talk with any mentors. I didn't create a list. Matter of fact, I did the opposite. I just told people I'm actually going to do it. And I'm thinking no one questioned me on it, surprisingly. When I shared with my parents that I was going to do it, they just said, okay, yeah, sure. And they never nudged me or encouraged me to go pursue the degree. It was just something that in the back of my mind, I felt I wanted to do it. Now I can tell you the reason I wanted to do the program and the reason now after completing the program, they're very different. So I went in with the typical like, oh, I just want people to call me Dr. Juan. I want to get that. And now after like completing it, it's like, no, I don't want people to tell me, call me Dr. Juan. I'm Kevin. So it's interesting. I've kind of gone through the process there. But it's the last thing I want to say is, aside from why, it's also there's an opportunity for access. And that's something to me that I just feel tremendously grateful for, and I find the greatest value in being a part of a group of like-minded individuals that are pursuing the same path, that same journey. My cohort's really close, the cohort that I was a part of, and now I have connections with professors. They've become my mentors as well in different spaces. Prior to actually going through this program, I knew nothing about higher education, the world of higher education, other than being as a student. And through this program, I've gotten to know a little bit more about the higher education space, and that's actually drawn me in and potentially wanting to go into higher education, as a profession, down the road. So, and that again, if you were to ask me would I ever want to become an assistant professor or a lecturer in college, I would have said no. And because of this opportunity, it's now like I'm open-minded. I'm like, no, actually, it's intriguing. So it's really just circling back. Why would someone want to be in the program? And one of the big reasons potentially can be also the access to the knowledge, the people, the resources.
Can I add something to that? The way you pose that also made me think, I think a big factor is what does this degree or this program unlock for you? So something like teaching in higher ed or teaching future teachers, you kind of have to go this higher education route to unlock that for yourself, right? So that's a consideration I made for myself too. Personally, academia is not my end goal. I want to develop tools for classrooms, but that requires a certain level of expertise. And so this unlocks that for me. So when you're making your pro-con list, consider that. What does it give you that you wouldn't otherwise be able to get at the education level where you're currently sitting?
Yeah. Now y'all got me thinking. Just kidding. I don't know. I graduated.
Come join us here.
We'll see. We'll see. I might have to write out some lists and stuff. I don't know if I'm that bold. So my last question for you both is, with you both are doing a lot going on. Well, Kevin, you already graduated, but what was well, you were in school, and what was something that you did to kind of practice self-care with the midst of all the readings and a lot of your schedule being very jam-packed? What is something that you do to kind of take care of yourself in the midst of all the busyness of being a doctoral student? A hobby maybe that you have.
Okay, this is going to sound weird, but to take a break from all the reading that I do, I read. I love reading, but I just get myself lost in fictional worlds, and I enjoy that. I think self-care is so important. It's something that I try to emphasize for other people in my department. I get to send out this monthly letter to all of the doc students, and I love just saying go for a walk, use headspace, take care of yourself, take a couple breaths. And at the end of the day, I kind of go based off what do I want? What sounds good to me right now? Right now it's, binge watching Bridgerton. So it kind of changes day to day. But I think the greater point is that you have to give yourself space for that. Whatever it is. Sometimes for me, it's crocheting. Sometimes it's going for a bike ride or going for a walk, or going to Target, but just prioritizing that time and saying, whatever it is that I feel like my body and my mind need, I'm going to give that to myself because I deserve it. And I can't be a good, student, friend, family member. I can't care for others if I don't care for myself first. So it doesn't matter what you're doing, but just take care of yourself.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah, I like the word that Melanie used, prioritizing. Just for self-care, you just got to prioritize it high on the list. You can prioritize it, just could be lower. You just want to prioritize a high on the list. And I think for me, part of the self-care was keeping things in perspective, because there is a lot of reading, and most of the reading gets you in either of two directions. One, deeper into the topic, or two, tangents to that topic. So I just remember I'd be reading an article and I'd be interested in, this section of the article. And now I'm looking up that article and it's taking me to here, and you're just going down a rabbit hole that takes away from the topic, or it could actually lead to something great. But it all takes time, right? You're just now reading and reading and reading. And unlike Melanie, I'm not a voracious reader of any sort. So I certainly do not like to read fiction. So that would not have been a very good self-care tactic for me. I can't stop nonfiction and go switch over to fiction. If anything, it'd be nonfiction to nonfiction. But it's really prioritizing and then understanding that don't beat yourself up. When things are difficult or hard and you feel like you can't pull through, I would just kind of, just basically have positive self-talk. I've made it this far, and it's what's one more year going to be. I just need to write another paragraph today, and then I'm good. You just got to trick your mind into thinking that, hey, it's not too bad. Because there's been moments, at least for me, where I just felt like I just could not get it done. I'm not going to finish on time, or whatever the timeline that I've set. And I went into the program pre-pandemic, so I was able to finish all of the classes and coursework in person before everything got shut down. And then during the pandemic is when I was doing my research, but my research originally was supposed to be all in in-person settings. So during the pandemic, then I had to actually overhaul my entire proposal, the methodology section. I had to rewrite it to make it compliant for the distance learning environment. And then carry out that research. And in the K-12 space, it was very challenging to try and get, a good number of participants, et cetera. And so, yeah, navigating the pandemic where during the daytime, that's all brand new too for my staff, for myself. And then, coming home and trying to work on the schoolwork was challenging. So what I take from it now is I think having navigated through all of that, I think everything else is a little bit easier. So you kind of just have to draw on prior experiences and convince yourself that this isn't as monumental as you think it is, and just push through.
I like what you said about tricking yourself into just feeling like things are okay, because I'm realizing now, when I did my master's, I would teach all day. So I'd get up at like 6, and then I would get to my school site, be there all day, then go straight to San Jose State and be there sometimes from 4 to 10, because we had those 3-hour evening classes, and then I would drive home and do it all over again. And like, when do you find time to go for a walk in the middle of that kind of day? So I turned my commutes into like my me time. So I like just cherished my morning coffee on my morning drive, and I would listen to whatever podcast I wanted, listen to an audiobook, and then driving home at night, because I had to commute like half an hour back home. I would listen to music that would just kind of calm me down. I wouldn't think about work or anything else, and that was just my time. So sneak it in there, you trick yourself.
Yeah, I do that currently, listen to a podcast, and yeah, because I'm at San Jose State for a very long time. So yes, thank you both for your answers, your advice, your guidance. It was great. I learned a lot. I believe our one special guest today here attending the alumni panel definitely enjoyed it too. I hope so. You guys definitely gave a lot of great advice and a lot to kind of think about, resonate, especially if you are for students who are thinking about going the doctoral pathway. So it was really great, very knowledgeable. So thank you both. And of course, you guys put your LinkedIn's on in the chat. So if you would like to copy and paste that onto something, onto a LinkedIn, definitely follow them, everybody. And I'll also put it in, maybe I'll put it on our, I think we have like a link tree or something. Maybe we can put in our link tree so students can like follow you both on LinkedIn and reach out if they have any questions. So thank you both again. And I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. I hope it'll stop, or maybe I'll pause it.